This is CBC Here and Now.
Now we're going to have plant workers go in plants. They say there's safety protocols. There are a few words on paper.
We also trying to negotiate a price for our this year's crab. As a fishery that's ready to start when it's safe to do so for both harvesters and plant workers.
Tonight, blocking crab shipments from processing plants, a fisheries protest over crab prices and safety from COVID-19.
Well, Carolyn, people getting ready to go fishing, but will anybody actually get to fish? A bit of a confrontation during a pandemic.
Well, fish harvesters have set up protests in several places in the province, among them Green Bay, where fish harvesters camped out overnight to stop 2 trucks filled with crab from getting to the Ocean Choice fish plant in Triton. There's now a court injunction to remove the blockade. Here Now's Troy Turner reports from the scene.
Some arrived at midnight. Others were taking day and evening shifts at the blockade in Southbrook. They do not want these trucks on the road to Triton for processing of crab at the Ocean Choice plant.
He wants to bring in crab from another province to put our workers at risk. And we also trying to negotiate a price for our this year's crab, and they're not giving us any resolution with their problems.
Oxford and about 50 other FFAW members staged a peaceful protest at the intersection of the Trans-Canada Highway. The union wants government to step in and prevent crab from entering Newfoundland plants.
The Premier, as leader of this province, has the ability to stop any product from coming into the province. And then that would be a first step there to show leadership from that perspective.
Ocean Choice owners, however, say the 120 workers at the Triton plant have always processed snow crab from outside the province. In fact, this plant relies on it given small crab quotas locally. They also say working conditions, given the pandemic, have already been approved.
We do have plans that are approved by Occupational Health and Safety Service Newfoundland. They've consulted with the Chief Medical Officer. We have all the plants retrofitted. We have the PPE in place. They've known that we're doing orientation with all the workers. The workers want to come into work.
Sullivan says he's worried suppliers will take their product elsewhere if trucking to plants is prohibited. A court injunction was filed against the FFAW and Spingle earlier this afternoon to end the blockade. Troy Turner, CBC News, Southbrook.
Well, the protests started last night in Port aux Basques, where fish harvesters met with crab boats at the dock. This video from the Fisheries Union shows people throwing ice on board to keep the crab chilled. The union agreed not to interfere with the crab icing while the vessel owners were refueling, but it wouldn't allow the out-of-province fish harvesters to offload their catch.
Newfoundland can't sell it, so there's no reason why PEI and Nova Scotia can bring it here to Newfoundland and sell it, and for Newfoundland processors to process it.
There were protests in Clarenville too. Fish harvesters also blocked trucks from going to crab plants. They say there are 2 issues facing the industry. They say it's unsafe for plant workers to resume processing during the COVID-19 pandemic, and it says the Association of Seafood Processors has refused to negotiate crab prices for when the fishery starts here later this spring.
We're listening to the medical advice. People want to do the right things in their communities. They don't want to spread this virus. So therefore, but now they're bringing crab in. Now we're going to have plant workers go in plants. They say there's safety protocols. There are a few words on paper. Some of it may be okay, but they don't have the proper protective gear, and not approved gear, by the way. And that's one of the issues.
Now, the protesters have been asking the provincial government to step in, but that doesn't look likely. The Premier said today that the government is not involved in setting the price of crab, but that the price-setting panel would be convening this week. And government officials have signed off on the safety plan for fish plant workers. But he says plant workers have the option of not going to work if they don't feel safe.
There's been some sharing of plans with Service Newfoundland and Labrador, and as my understanding, they meet the guidelines, And so, but it's safety first. If you're not comfortable in going to work, well, then you can stay home. And all the processors have said, from what I know, is that there'd be no ramifications, there'd be no loss of benefits in terms of seniority and so on. So the workplace must be safe if you decide to go there.
Now, the FFAW represents both fish harvesters and plant workers. Anthony spoke to the union rep today about the protest.
Well, Carol, I'm going to get more now on today's big story in the fishery. So give me a sense, is this about price or safety?
Well, this is about both price and safety for fish harvesters and for plant workers. For the past number of weeks, we've been delaying the beginning of the fishing season because fish harvesters felt they weren't ready to go out aboard their vessels, and plant workers have felt that the proper measures have not been in place to ensure that they don't spread COVID-19 in their workplaces. So it's about safety for sure. And then on top of that, the Association of Seafood Producers and the processing companies in the province have refused to negotiate a price on snow crab, which has made it incredibly difficult for our harvesters to get ready to go back to work. They've been waiting weeks for the processors to come to the table and negotiate a price, and they've really delayed that. They've been dragging their heels. They've been willing to talk about anything other than a price, and that's a source of a huge amount of tension for fish harvesters in the province right now.
If, as the government contends that the FFAW, as one of the partners in all this, agreed to the necessary safety recommendations had to happen, why is there this friction?
Well, the problem on the plant worker side is that the people working in the plants have not been informed of what the procedures are that the companies are implementing, and they have a lot of questions about access to proper personal protective equipment, things such as masks that have not been readily available in a lot of parts of the country. And for those workers in fish plants, many of them suffer from things like shellfish asthma, pre-existing respiratory conditions, so they have a lot of concerns about having those adequate measures in place. And on the fishing vessel side of things, we've been working with the Fish Harvesting Safety Association to develop plans so that harvesters can go back to work and do so safely. But of course, it takes time to make sure that people have the proper measures in place and the proper equipment in place to do that.
One of the issues that came up at today's briefing was, whether or not in these protests, for lack of a better word, whether or not certain members are actually maintaining enough social distance. Any concerns about that?
People are trying to maintain distance when they're out on the line. Many of them are there with their families, their wives, husbands, working on fishing vessels or in fish plants. They have their sons or daughters there with them from their household. So certainly there are family units on the line at that blockade, but we've sent a very strong message to our members to ensure we're maintaining social distancing and keeping each other safe, because safety is obviously the number one concern. But overall, Anthony, I think the most important thing that we need to see here is leadership from the provincial government. They've really been sitting on their hands on this. They've pointed to FFAW and to the processing companies to make the decisions on this, but we really need to hear from the Fisheries Minister and the Premier on it.
Okay, one last question for you. Some comments on social media and elsewhere that maybe one of the problems is with all, the various outpouring of EI and all these federal programs, that maybe fish plant workers just don't really want to head to the fish plants.
I can't think of a more insulting thing to say about working people in this province. People that work in fish plants are some of the hardest working people I know. They are eager to get back to work, but they don't want to put their health and safety at risk. Many of them have pre-existing health conditions. They are concerned about that. They're concerned about their families. To suggest that people don't want to go to work and want to earn income from a government program, it's insulting to the highest degree, and I would say that anybody who is making that suggestion should be apologizing to the working people in this province.
Well, on the flip side of this, the Association of Seafood Processors says processing plants are safe for workers. Derek Butler says new safety measures are in place and the health officials have given plants the green light to open. He believes the union is being irresponsible by suggesting working conditions are unsafe and that this conflict is a bargaining ploy to influence crab prices.
We are ready to run our facilities, and we believe we can do so safely in the context of the risks. We will have COVID, it appears, for some time. And what we're not prepared to do, and the FAW have said as much, is throw away the fishery. How can they then say and stir the pot and create the anxiety by saying our plans are no good? They are in fact repudiating the advice and the counsels of the Chief Medical Officer and the Occupational Health and Safety in the province and the Chief Medical Officer of Canada, who has said that seafood facilities can run. And here's the other irony. They're doing it in the Gulf. We have crab fisheries in Quebec, Nova Scotia, PEI, and New Brunswick. We don't have a fishery in Newfoundland because the FFAW, I guess, needs to play this card in respect to price, to try and influence price. The missing element to any start of fish price negotiations is the fishery going to start, and when is the fishery going to start? We typically negotiate prices the week before we have a fishery, and right now the FAW are asking that the fishery, after having been delayed from April 6th to April 20th to May 1st, now they're asking that it be delayed to May 11th. They're going to meet before the end of this week and make another decision on whether they think that date works. We can't, in the context of COVID-19, with the market challenges that everybody appreciates, negotiate crab prices so far in advance of actually selling the crab in the market. We typically do it the week before, and that's what we need to do.
Well, as we heard in Anthony's interview, the safety protocols of physical distancing didn't seem to be a priority during the protest. Health officials have told people to remain 6 feet or 2 meters apart. But this video from the protest shows some people standing closer together. Health Minister John Haggie was asked about that today and whether there should be consequences for the protesters breaking the rules.
Whether or not you're breaking the law is not a decision for a politician, but if they can't keep 6 feet apart, they may find themselves subject to an order. Well,
some good news again today. No new cases of COVID-19 in this province, but there were 2 cases announced over the weekend. There's also good news in how many people have recovered. Of the 258 cases in the province in total, 221 have recovered. That leaves 34 active cases of the illness. Well, could your cell phone be key to containing COVID-19 in this province? Government is raising the idea of using your cell phone data to identify contacts with people who test positive for the disease. But there are big privacy implications. As you can imagine, here Now's Peter Cowan joins us live. So Peter, this idea came up during today's presentation of new modeling data. How would it work?
Carolyn, it would basically involve you installing an app on your phone, and then using Bluetooth, it would keep track of everyone that you come in contact with, as you say, go to the grocery store or the pharmacy. Basically, this is a higher tech version of what officials are already doing, which is when someone tests positive for COVID-19, they try and figure out everyone who they've been in contact with and make sure that those people then get tested and isolated. Here's how the health minister explained how it would work today.
It uses cell phones to identify individuals rather than the guy in the grey jacket, 6 paces ahead of me in Dominion. That would be how that would work. It would be an opt-in system, as I understand it, and it would be consent-based. The evidence from South Korea and Singapore is that to have an impact, you needed on at least 60% of cell phones in the province.
Now, the prospect of the province having a big database filled with everyone's movements, everyone they've been in contact with, raises some privacy implications, and they have said they are going to work with the Information and Privacy Commissioner to address this, doing things like making it voluntary, requiring you to have to sort of unlock the data to provide it to public health if it's needed. But how soon could this happen? Well, it might be sooner than you think, said the health minister.
How soon? We're actually in discussions with a local company as well as on the national level, and we think we could have something up and running within a couple of weeks.
Okay, well, Peter, there was also new modeling announced today, updated projections. How do they show, what do they show about how many people could be hospitalized or admitted to the ICU?
Those were some of the sort of key figures that we looked at just over 2 weeks ago when they released this data the last time. And this time, they're actually not providing us with any of that information. The main reason is they can't realistically model it. There hasn't been anyone admitted to the hospital in more than 10 days. And so without new data to work on, they've essentially said it wouldn't be useful. The same reason that they're not providing any sort of data about how many deaths there might be in the province. There's just too much of a spread for it to be a useful number. Carolyn?
Thanks so much, Peter. That's Here Now's Peter Cowan reporting live. Well, volunteering for a community cleanup. For many, it's a rite of spring. But like most group activities, that annual tradition has been derailed by COVID-19. In St. John's, it means the task of removing all that spring litter will fall largely to the city. Here Now's Mark Quinn reports.
When the snow finally melts in St. John's, flowers aren't the only thing revealed. There's lots and lots of garbage. In a normal year, hundreds of people would be out volunteering to pick up that garbage. But this year's been anything but normal.
With individual workers keeping their distance to prevent the spread of the virus, cleaning up is expected to take much longer than usual.
And then you have the layer on of community groups not being able to get out. So Clean St. John's is not able to organize their cleanups. And with 300 of those roughly planned and scheduled each year, that not happening is a significant amount of litter that's not being picked up by the community.
Still, the city says there is a way that individual residents and businesses can help.
We'd encourage, with proper care, for homeowners and people in the city to clean up their own property.
I never thought I'd say this, but man, I missed the dump. Unfortunately, if you do pick up garbage around your own place, you can't bring it here because this facility is closed. The city's asking you to put it in your own garbage bins, and their trucks will come pick it up. Mark Quinn, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, the town of Happy Valley Goose Bay is reopening its landfill to the public. It comes after receiving feedback from residents in the town. The town has posted signs indicating that the COVID-19 physical distancing measures are in place. It's asking people not to loiter at the landfill area, and no one is allowed inside to scavenge. Anyone who breaks the rules will be banned from using the dump.
Got some quiet weather on tap over the next few days. Beautiful temperatures, though, for parts of Labrador. I'll have all those details in your full forecast coming up.
This weather update is brought to you by the Healthcare Foundation Home Lottery. Bonus deadline is midnight Friday, May 15th. Order tickets now at hcfhomelottery.ca.
What a beautiful weekend, at least the last half of the weekend across most of the province. Hopefully you got out to enjoy it. Another beautiful day today, just a little bit more cloud cover in play across the island. Let's take a look at the highs that we reached. Beautiful, 7 to as much as 9 degrees as you head towards the west coast, and then up through Labrador, Happy Valley, Goose Bay, the hotspot so far, reaching a high near 10 degrees. Now, we do have a low pressure system that's just sitting south of us right now, an area of high pressure over Labrador. That cloud cover is thanks to that, and you can see on the radar there just a little bit of activity happening on the southern portion of the Avalon as well as the Burin. Can't tell whether that's actually touching the ground as far as the camera goes, but it's there, and it does look like most of the precipitation is going to stay well south of us, though, thanks to this area of low pressure. That high pressure is keeping it to the south, so that's certainly good news there. As we head through the night tonight, really the only thing to note will be the winds. They're going to ramp up as we head after midnight into the early morning hours, somewhere between 60 to as much as 80 kilometers per hour in some of those exposed areas along the south coast. Otherwise, not a whole lot happening tonight, just partly to mostly cloudy skies. And as we head through the day tomorrow, those winds will ramp up right across the island and we'll switch to east-northeasterlies tomorrow. So we're going to get back into that onshore flow. You can see up through Labrador, an absolutely gorgeous day. Even the northern peninsula as well, you're going to see plenty of sunshine. But again, that precipitation should stay well south of the island, maybe in the early morning hours, and then as we head towards the early morning hours on Wednesday, we might see a few flurries in play. But overall, again, those temperatures, because we're going to start to see that onshore flow, maybe a little bit cooler along the northeast, should reach a high near 8 degrees again in Corner Brook, maybe even a degree more than that. And more than likely those double digits yet again for Happy Valley, Goose Bay, as you reach a high near 11 degrees through the day tomorrow. Otherwise, mid to high single digits across the board. On Wednesday, as I said, getting a little bit more unsettled. Going to put that potential for some flurries in play through central, along the northeast as well. But another beautiful day as you head away from those onshore winds. 9 degrees in Corner Brook, putting 12 in for you for Happy Valley, Goose Bay. So if you have any yard work to do, that's certainly the time to do it. And then for Lab City, you're sitting around 6 degrees through the day on Wednesday. Now, like I said, it was a beautiful weekend for most of us. I had to share this photo of Mad Rocks Trail. Emma Wells sent us that great shot. Just the East Coast Trail, obviously, near Bay Roberts. Looks like we're in the Caribbean, doesn't it? Thank you so much for sending that in. And if you have any weather photos to share with us, send them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
Welcome back to Here and Now. Well, Canadian troops have already been called in to Quebec and Ontario to help deal with COVID-19 emergencies in long-term care facilities, but now officials in Fort McMurray in northern Alberta want military help to deal with local flooding. No request has come from the province so far, but Intergovernmental Affairs Minister and Albertan Chrystia Freeland says the situation is on Ottawa's radar.
The fact that flooding season and in due course forest fire season is coinciding with coronavirus in Canada is posing some special challenges. We have been gearing up for those from the outset, and this is an issue that we are looking at urgently today.
Floodwaters are threatening homes and business in downtown Fort Mac. Mandatory evacuation orders and boil water advisories were issued today for the area. The municipality prepares every year for possible flooding during the spring thaw. A caution tonight from Dr. Janice Fitzgerald, the province's medical officer of health, to be kind to those who do get sick from COVID-19. Here's why.
This pandemic is frightening for many of us. There is much information out there that is confusing and sadly at times false. Fear and misinformation can make us behave in ways that we normally would not. Please consult trusted and reliable sources for your information about COVID-19 to ensure you have the most up-to-date and accurate information. Please remember that people can follow all the guidelines that we recommend and still contract COVID-19. Like so many respiratory viruses, this is very easily spread. People who contract this disease need our support and understanding, not our judgment and disdain. They are likely scared and sick. Please treat them as you want to be treated in the same situation. No act of kindness, no matter how small, is ever wasted.
Well, some good advice there. Well, across the pond, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson is back at work today after recovering from a severe case of COVID-19. Today, he voiced cautious optimism over the nation's recovery, but warned of a second wave of illness.
That would mean not only a new wave of death and disease, but also an economic disaster. And we would be forced once again to slam on the brakes across the whole country and the whole economy.
His government is facing pressure to announce its plan for reopening the economy. Johnson says any loosening of the lockdown will happen in stages as Britain starts to turn the tide. He was hospitalized earlier this month after his symptoms from COVID-19 worsened. Well, that's it for Here and Now tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. Good night.